Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me today. It's Allan Laboucan with the Rocks and Stocks News Show. And I've got a new company to talk about on Rocks and Stocks News, but they're also a brand new publicly trading company that's only been trading for a couple of months and just happened to be in the best jurisdiction for copper exploration. Uh, Confirmed recently by the takeover offer by BHP and Lundin Mining of over $4 billion Canadian for Filo. And Mogotes is right beside them. So I thought this would be a great opportunity to talk to Allan from Mogotes. Thank you very much for joining me today, Allan.
Lovely to be on. Thanks, Ellen.
So, boy, that must have taken you by storm. I don't know if I've ever seen a brand new public company that gets a massive takeover like that right next door to them right out of the gate.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. Of course, we've been working here almost 2 years now, so it's not like we've just started. Although we've just gone public, we've probably done something around the ballpark of 13 million of expenditure over across two field seasons. So we've been working hard over here for a couple of years now. Obviously, very excited by this takeover. It just really validates that this is going to be a huge mining camp. So yeah, we're pretty thrilled.
So you guys raised 13 million as a private company or more?
More than that. So just over 20 million roughly was raised. We're still there with, I think the last presentation puts us at 8.5 mil. You have to update that figure, but it wouldn't be far off. So yeah, we've done two field seasons of work here. First field season was and maybe I'm jumping ahead of your questions, but it was really looking at it from a blank slate perspective, knowing that there's a big discovery next door. We kind of took a step back and did a really systematic sampling program, and we also did a really comprehensive mapping program and quite a lot of geophysics with new technology and new approaches. So those multiple data sets kind of came together to form really compelling and interesting targets. To our surprise, all of those targets were untested by previous drilling. The previous drilling had been minimal. It was focused entirely on areas where there was really good copper in soils, really good geochem, the low-hanging fruit. And I'm not saying I would do it any differently, but it just means that there's quite a lot of opportunity for us when we're looking at the targets that we've managed to generate there.
Well, I also imagine that since that work was done, there's been a pretty big explosion of work. And I guess that's
Yeah.
why you guys were able to raise millions of dollars as a private company. You've got Lunahuasi, you've got Filo del Sol, Jose Maria in this
Yeah.
Vicuña district that is, probably one of the most important copper exploration districts anywhere in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And, it's very different exploring in the high Andes for copper, just over a decade ago, which is when the last exploration was done on this project. And comparing that to exploring with copper, for copper today, particularly here, where then that there's multiple discoveries on this middle Miocene aged belt, and you're right in that district, right in the heart of it. So the approaches you take, the technology you use, the certainty you have that there's a prize here to be won changes a lot of that, and also makes finance available because they're really good targets.
Well, as I mentioned to you prior, you asked me if I knew anything about the area in your company. I have done quite a bit of homework, and one of the amazing things that sticks out to me like a sore thumb is the vast areas of alteration.
Mhm.
And that alteration continues from way over quite a distance from you through Filo and all the way through your project. It's the old saying in the mining business is that big deposits leave big footprints, and those are some massive alteration zones.
Yep, absolutely. And as Robert Friedland says, the oak never falls far from the oak tree. So yeah, that's true. It's entirely true. Do you want me to show you a couple of pages on this, or we just have more of an
Yeah.
audio chat?
Let me just give you the ability to share there. You're good to go.
Perfect.
So, folks, just for your knowledge that aren't geologists, alteration is when the metals bearing fluids hit the country rock, they chemically alter the rock. And so, when you get these large areas of alteration, it's indicative of large deposits. And that's exactly what's been found in the camp. I'll let you take over with your slide there, Allan.
Yeah, no worries. I thought it would be good just to show just a bit of context on where we are, and then I can show you. Now that you mentioned the alteration, I'll show you the processing we did on satellite imagery that helped us hone in on some of our targets.
Great.
So what we're looking at here is more of a regional look at the Vicuña district. And for a little bit of orientation, north is to the right of the page. So
Okay.
typically you see north up. This
I
is
was
north to the right.
wondering why your project is called Filo Sur. It said it looks like the west to me, not the south.
No, yeah,
Sir,
yeah. I
by the
mean,
way, Sur is the Spanish word for south.
yeah, exactly. So I mean, it's just easier to visualize this belt,
The
which
belt,
runs
yeah.
north south,
Okay.
laid across this way. It's just much more compelling, easy to see. So north to the right of the page, there's a scale here at the bottom of 5 kilometers for context. And what you can see is running from north down to the south, there's what we've indicated with this dotted line is a middle Miocene belt. So that's the age of the rocks that we see at Los Alados deposit, which is owned by NGX Minerals,
Yeah.
Lunahuasi, and also at Filo
Filo.
del Sol. Now we have limited age dating on the rocks in our package, but what we have suggests that it's similar in age, in the same middle Miocene age. So what we have is, as you said, extensive altered rocks running down this belt all the way into our project, extensive alteration. And we're indeed part of this Vicuña district, directly adjoining the Filo del Sol project here on the southern side of it. And in the last season, we had generated, sorry, the last 2 seasons of work, we had generated multiple new target areas, which are indicated in the red circles here on the project.
And
Many
that's
of them quite.
geochem outline, or is that
That's actually
geophysical?
no, that would be depending on the target. It would either be a geological plus geophysical plus geochem or
Yeah.
alteration plus geophysical. Depends on
Okay.
the target. But
I
basically,
gotcha.
that's our view of where's the target area that we're exploring.
Got
So
it.
it's a combination of factors that's into there. We also have marked in the dotted line one of these kind of big structures. You can see them on other sections of this map. And I'm now speaking more what I would have Stephen Nano share, but typically we see on these productive mineral belts, including this one, which runs north-south and has multiple deposits, the intersection of these northwest trending faults with the productive mineral belt is conducive to a lot of metal and fluid, accumulating. And so we
Yeah,
see that.
folks, what he's talking about there is these deep structures. They are the conduit that the metals bearing fluids use to make their way from deeper up towards the surface. And if you look at Lunahuasi there, it's right beside a structure. Los Alados is straddling a structure. And then they have some very nice targets right along the structure as well.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, we're seeing a number of things from, obviously we're next to and on the same belt has multiple very large discoveries. We're seeing extensive alteration continuing southward into the property package. We're on this, a pretty conducive structural setting here. And indeed, in the multiple layers of data sets that we've accumulated, we're finding good justification for a number of new targets that some of them we've started initial drilling at, but we're going to, the majority undrilled, that we're going to attack this field season. A number of drill targets we've established here.
Another thing that's important about this is so you've got this big camp where big deposits are found, and you've got big alteration zones, and um, another tool that is used in exploration is geophysics. But having been taught geophysics by a guy who ran the world exploration for Anglo, he often pointed out the first thing you have to do in an area is find out if and what kind of geophysics work, whether they
Yeah.
work or not. And that is very evident at the Filo del Sol deposit. And those geophysics have almost perfectly mapped the Filo del Sol deposit. So we know that the geophysics are working, and then those continue over onto the Filo Sur project owned by Mogotes. So you've got everything just lining up beautifully, Allan. There you go. You can see
Yes, that's
folks
one.
there at the Filo finding copper across the empty conductive area. You see how it's just perfectly mapping that deposit where they've done all the drilling, and then you see some beautiful geophysical targets on the Mogote side.
Absolutely. It's worth bearing in mind, though, when you look at this image, this is at 600 meters below surface from the Filo public disclosure. They did not disclose the magnitude of the geophysical response here. So the conductivity numbers and the scale have not been disclosed.
Okay.
And on our end, the MT is this cut area here. And we've also put it at 600 meters below surface so they can kind of be compared.
Yeah.
And the breaks and the scale that we've used roughly put the red zones at 200 ohm meters or less, which is what we've seen at similar targeting efforts over at our peers, for example, at the Valeriano deposit by ATEX Resources or at Altar by Aldebaran. They also use the same geophysical provider as we did. And also, I believe, are leveraging MT as one of the data sets that they're using. I mentioned that because they're not like for like images, but it
Yeah.
gives you a good indication that the MT, the
Works.
magnetotelluric data, works. Yeah.
That's what I was trying to point out.
Yes.
And folks, it's not always the intensity of the anomaly that's important, because as Allan was pointing out there, if your deposit is deep, the response isn't going to be the same as if that deposit is sitting right at the surface. But what I do think is important is how well it's worked to outline. You can see inside that geophysical anomaly at Filo, all of those drill holes are within that anomaly. So even if you don't know exactly what their data is, you certainly can see by the way they walked the drilling of what they targeted.
It will be one of the tools. There's a number of tools you're going to need because these are large land packages.
Huge.
So, this is 2Ks here for scale. So we've
Wow.
got across this 88 square kilometers, or if you know hectares, 8,800. So it's big. It's big.
See,
The first season, a lot of our task was putting out new roads so we could access the reaches of this project that had not been explored because they were not accessed. And we're motivated to do that because we know that there's a big discovery lurking right here,
of course.
and we've got to be systematic and get to everywhere. So all this geophysics you're seeing was acquired when we started. It was not there before.
Okay.
So we did a regional scale survey. It involves transmitter stations being placed across the project, and each transmitter station also then receives data from the others. So because it's a grid of stations, it's able to basically collect, or rather they interpolate or invert three-dimensional data from it. So it's different from the typical line surveys where they run a line of wire and they get kind of two-dimensional lines. This is quite I would say effective at covering large areas, but also generates quite a
3D.
volume of data that's really useful for 3D targeting.
And
So
you
we
have some beautiful 3D anomalies to show us, I imagine, there, Allan.
Yeah, absolutely. And you'll see those in the cross sections of the targets. And we were able to follow them up with what the provider calls DDIP, I believe. So lines the more conventional IP lines, but deeper penetrating. So we're able to then have two different data sets that we jointly kind of processed, and the 3D from that is what we're using. And one of the things that we're also trying to fold in now after our new field season is we had some 3D magnetics over the property. And you look at all those layers together, the magnetic tellurics, the IP, the magnetics, and the IP has two data sets. And you start to get a really compelling pictures. Then you have our drilling, and you look into the drilling and how that correlates to the geophysics, and a number of really interesting targets start to pop out. So we're kind of going all over the place with the discussion here, but
Oh no,
you're right.
no.
Yeah,
That's great. No, I mean that's the way exploration is, Alan. You get and consume data and try to confirm that with the truth machine, the drilling,
yeah,
and this gives you targeting, precise targeting, which is crucially important. You don't want to waste money if you can
absolutely, yeah.
avoid it.
Oh, and I think the great part is you mentioned alteration. Let me just pull up that image as well. You can get a view of what we did with the alteration. So we purchased very good multispectral satellite imagery. It's kind of reasonably well used nowadays in the industry. It's a Worldview 3 satellite imagery, and we process that up and allows us to get the spectral response, profile it into types of alteration. And so we purchased the imagery across into Filo, and then you can see that quite a bit of alteration in our property here. All the different colors match up to different styles of
Actually, that's a
types
bit of an
alteration.
understatement because I'm going to point some things out there for my audience. If you look over at Aurora, folks, that sort of tannish material that you see all around the main deposit and then bleeding off of it, that's your alteration zone. Then you step next over to flamenco and you have a similar scenario. And then step way over to Frontera and Nueva call what's that?
Colorida.
Nueva what?
Colorida, red color in Spanish.
Okay,
Yeah.
so Frontera,
Yeah.
and you actually can start the alteration up at Cumbre, and I think there's a fault there in
Yes.
black. Yeah. So all within on the other side of that fault, there's alteration going right from Cumbre all the way over to the number 2, number 3, and number 7. That's just, well, you could fit Aurora and Flamenco easily within inside of that alteration. And there is some intense alteration down right following along that fault. Then you go on the other side of the fault and you see Rincon. And there's another that's similar to flamenco. So yeah, that's a bit of an understatement, Alan. You got just as much alteration as next
Yeah.
door there.
And what's exciting is, and again, I'm not the best placed person to go through all this. It would be great to have, a more technical call if it's interesting to do.
Definitely.
But we had, as I said, we had a systematic approach. We went and did soil grid over the whole project, previously not able to be accessed. I mean, this is a good image to see what the topography looks like. And so these Rincon, Camino, and all of over here, not really systematically sampled before we came. Some of the focus areas were in this northern bit, central bit, and a little bit over here. So we were more systematic, step back, did a pretty substantial talus soil grid. This is an example of the coverage that we have. You can see the copper in soils
Wow.
on our project.
Wow.
So what stood out is obviously, yes, and you can see on this image, by the way, Filo del Sol, some of the best intervals are not under the highest, hottest geochem numbers, but and that's similar to our project. The hottest geochem is kind of where the initial focus was, but you can see our new exploration areas they do have anomalous copper and moly and gold. And when we followed those up, this is Rincon and Camino, and that was in our latest press release. We went up to Rincon and Camino area, did some recon with our field teams this season, and we just encountered, in the road cuts that we put through there, just hundreds of meters of sheeted veinlets in the rocks. And, went south several Ks, come into this Rincon area again. Started here, sheeted veinlets. Then in this road cut, followed this south where the alteration is more subdued, but we still had soil anomaly. And picked up more and more of these sheeted veinlets, but also vuggy silica textures, which is more high sulfidation epithermal. We ran a trench through there over, I think it's 200 meters. It's in the press release. Again, sheeted veinlets, copper oxides. The trench results, I think, were released, and pull them up here. You can see that we're now looking at a new zone that had previously been unsampled before we came. Roughly 4 kilometers.
Folks, now your map is oriented north to south.
North, yes.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So
what happened was
Camino and Rincon is now you can look at it top down from Camino to Rincon.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So, and we haven't even gone to this southern anomaly. You can see the soil grid here. This southern copper anomaly. We didn't manage to get there. The snow fell early this year. And, all of our peers, Filo and GX, a lot of us had to just come down the mountain, mid-April.
Yeah.
The year prior, we managed to get into the second week of June. So it's a little bit
variable. What's pops out to me is that your copper, your gold, your zinc, and your lead are all popping out in the exact same spots.
Yeah.
You're getting overlapping mineralization there that is all over the place.
And you can see the types of rocks in here, the textures, the veining, the veinlet densities. And I think this trench here, you can see 2024 trench, 150 meters, 0.23 grams gold, 1.4 grams per ton silver. And this, our contention, we have to work on this and understand better, but hopefully, and let's let Stephen come in and have a chat, but we think we're at the top of the system. So at depth, and we're seeing, I think he's got a section here, some pretty compelling geophysical anomalies sitting underneath those trenches, right? So this is,
folks,
this is a section.
I think what you're getting at, Allan, is that in the geological model of porphyry systems, distal to the heat engine, you're going to have veins, epithermal veins. And I live in Mexico, Allan, and all over the place are epithermal veins that make up all of the silver and gold mines up here. And so those the potential for epithermal veins sitting on top the porphyry is quite impressive, not just as a potential to make discoveries of high-grade epithermal veins, but also is helping you in your targeting because it helps direct you towards the heat engine.
Yeah. Yep. So I think let's step back a bit, because if we dive into the details, I'll be well beyond my depth. But
no worries.
If you look at, let's go back to the kind of prospect.
I'll try to help you out where I can there, Allan. I've only been doing exploration for 30 years.
Yeah. I mean, I'm comfortable talking, but it's another thing entirely being on the record on video. But
you're doing a great job. You're doing a great job, Darren.
So look, it's really exciting. I think what we're saying here, just to recap, great, very large land package, right structural setting, extensive alteration, extensive metal moving in this system. We've seen that. I showed you the panel with the copper in soils.
Yeah.
Right. And we're on that key mineralized belt that runs north-south, where, many productive deposits have been found. Prior to the Lundins coming here, there was a gap, but now we're seeing these discoveries made. And, hats off to the Lundin Group team. Phenomenal exploration outcomes here.
Yeah.
And there's, this Miocene age belt continues into the property. And we've done systematic exploration work that's proven up extensive alteration, mineralization, and targets. And we want to work these targets up into being drilled. This Rincon and Camino zone here in the east was previously not even sampled, and we've created, I think, an opportunity of 4Ks north-south and hundreds of meters east-west, I think, and we're going to go and work there and see, but this may extend to the east and to the south. We're obviously very interested as well in this Colorita zone, which is, some exploration work has already gone into there. Cumbre and Meseta, completely untested, more of a high sulfidation epithermal concept. And in the south here, we've got two porphyry-like targets that may be part of the same system. And we have a couple of interesting findings there that we want to talk about in the coming weeks.
It's pretty exciting, not just because there's been a $4 billion takeover next door to you, but the work that they've done helps you guys in a big way in the work that you're doing on your project, and probably saves you about a few years worth of exploration work. You kind of get the blueprint of what to go after there, Allan.
Yes, absolutely. Although, sometimes the scale of this thing, you'd have to do some of the systematic work anyway, because even if you know what you're looking for, you just have to cover this whole project. There's just, you don't want to miss the big one, and so you got to work through these things, methodically and systematically, and that's what we've been doing. We're going to continue doing that. So we're pretty pumped.
So,
and I think
where it stands now is you guys have done some drilling. Give us an idea of what is pending now, and then we'll talk a little bit about what's in the near term.
Sure. I just need to give me a pause. I've got a meeting in now. I've
Okay.
got to push. Yeah.
Okay.
Let me push that 10 minutes.
Okay, perfect. So I'll talk while Allan is pushing his next meeting up 10 minutes for us, folks. It's it's a pretty impressive project, sitting right beside a $4.5 billion Canadian takeover, and I really am impressed with the work that Mogotes has done. They're doing all that systematic work that it's sometimes that systematic work can lead to years of systematic work to then get you to the point where you can make a discovery. But as I said, that the work that Filo has done, the work that NGEX has done, and Lundin, making these discoveries in the Vicuña district, they're giving the geologists sort of a blueprint of how to go forward with the exploration. And that's a big time saver and money saver, because they'll be able to target things more accurately. I got you back now, Allan.
I am back. Yes.
Oh, cool.
So I guess you what you asked was a little bit of an idea of what's coming up. Is that right, Allan?
Yeah. Okay. What because I know you guys have some pending assays from drilling.
Yeah.
And then we'll talk about what's coming up from there.
Sure. I just want to point out drilling we've mentioned and kind of given our analysis of the drilling in the first press release. And I'll highlight on this map. Oh, map's gone. Let's bring it up. Where that drilling was. It was a short field season, so we consider it more of an initial probe into the system.
Yep.
Really, most of the targets are untested, and that's happening in the coming season. But if you look on this map, the Cruz del Sur target got one hole, where my mouse is hovering, about 500 M. We did one in the Colorita zone, in the Colorita pipe. That was about 1.2 Ks. Okay.
Yeah.
And then we started one into the Frontera target. There's a number of targets there, one of the targets. And we had to terminate at 500 meters or so to leave because of the snow.
Okay.
So hang on, let me just bring this window over here. Can you still see the screen?
Yep.
Yeah. So what we're waiting for here is some of the assays. We're kind of putting the analysis of that together now, and that will be released. But the findings are more or less described in that first press release. And we also then had put out some info on the targets that we discovered this season. So, for example, the Camino Rincon area, we had a pretty extensive discussion on that, press release number 2. This Filo and Alunita zone, which is about 2 kilometers in length, was discussed in our first press release. This is where, in the northeast portion of it, we had a over 4 gram per ton gold rock chip, and we really wanted to get across and sample this alunite structure. But we didn't get a chance because of the snow. So that's an emerging target that we're going to be probably drilling and testing further this season as well. So what to expect coming forward is in the coming weeks, we will receive and analyze and put out those assays to supplement the information we put out in that first press release. We're also going to discuss a little bit further some of the targets that we're seeing across the property in light of the new data that we've collected. So a little bit more of a deep dive on the different prospect areas and why we find them attractive. And probably for each prospect area, a bit of a plan on what's next. For instance, over at Camino and Rincon, we do know that we had a road cut that was mineralized and we had a trench that was mineralized, and we want to go south and test over here. We want to have more detailed mapping done as well to extend this zone. And then we're going to pick our best targets for the drilling this season.
So before I leave you, before I let you go, Allan,
Yeah.
you're getting very good geological advice, and I think it would be remiss of me not to ask you who's giving you that
Yeah.
advice.
So our technical program, we have a very good team. I feel anyway. So one of our board of directors and technical advisors, Stephen Nano. Stephen was porphyry and epithermal type mineralization is right up his alley. He's lived about 30 years in South America, founded and ran a prospect generator there called Mirasol Resources for many years. And this is the kind of stuff he loves. And he really started using some of these techniques when he was quite young. If you look at there's a deposit.
And by the way, Mirasol
Yeah.
is well known for the work that they've done over the years. I kind of knew who your key guy was, but I thought it was worth asking anyways. Mirasol has
Yeah.
done. They were a prospect generator that did a lot of great work.
Yeah, I think so. I think when you look at what and there's others as well. So I want to just call out, we've got a team in Argentina, some very, very talented people down there. Silvio Franco is our country manager, who's been, with Hochschild, other companies for over 30 years. Valeria Simon, who's a PhD porphyry geologist, and a number of others that we've been working together for over 2 years. Stephen, in particular, I was going to say he was using this alteration analysis targeting method from when he was just born, I think in the early 90s, and effectively used it to stake what became Cerro Negro, which is I think over 8 million ounces of gold. So he was with, I believe it was MIM at the time, could have been Newcrest.
I'm smiling because I know that discovery really well. I picked a company right beside them that also made a big discovery and was bought out for about $400 million. So yeah,
which one was that?
Pretty Exeter or Extory.
Oh yes, yeah, I heard of that.
Yeah. So yeah, you're getting great advice there, Allan. And I know you're getting close to your next meeting. Why don't I wrap it up? Do you have any closing statements?
No, I'm really happy to be here. I think a lot of exciting stuff is happening on this. It will continue to happen from what we've seen. And I mentioned this in the press release, where we go and we apply, rigorous exploration methods. Great stuff just keeps popping out of the project. So I think, we're onto something exciting. This field season is going to be super interesting. I think just stay tuned and, looking forward to updating you on our next release on what we're seeing and bringing Stephen on maybe.
Yeah, that sounds great. I'm going to close it off. So what Allan was describing there is an old saying, that advice that I got from my geological mentor. He said, projects tend to start out really big, and then as you do more work, they get smaller. And what he's describing there about each time they do more work, it gets better and better. That's a trend that usually happens when you find a mine. Now, of course, they have to do a lot more work, especially with the drilling, to really find that out. But it's really exciting when you see that trend developing early in your exploration. And I pointed out that he's getting great advice because, everybody says they got a great geologist and they're doing great work, but actions speak louder than words. And I can see in the work that they're doing that they do have a great team involved with the company as well. So looking forward to more data from this project. I think that, a lot of people are cashing in some big checks because of the success at Filo next door. And I wouldn't surprise me if some of that money makes its way next door to Mogotes. Brand new company. Take a look, do your homework, speak with your financial advisors. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.